You look comfortable.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so I'm gonna call this regular meeting, even though it says January 16th on there, today it's actually February 20th? Yeah, February 20th is 7:00 PM. First things first, roll call. I'm Tony Bolduc, Chair, Lisa De Maria.
Here.
Alan Parody. Crickets. Tim,
Puyelli.
there you go, thank you.
Here.
Stan Reinheimer,
Here.
Marion Stay,
Here.
Daniel Smith,
Here,
Jonathan Castor.
Yes.
Good shoot. I think that's Alan's money. That is Alan.
I'll say here.
Here. There you go. All right. On to audience to citizens. So citizens may address the commission on items that are not listed on the agenda. Nobody online. Be in the audience, so I think we're all right. Item 3, approval of the minutes. We have January 16th, 2025, regular meeting minutes.
The actual January 16th.
Right, the actual January 16th. Everybody had a chance to eyeball them?
Yeah.
If so, looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
That's Tim.
No second.
Lisa, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Let's go. Okey dokey. On to new business. So we're on to more ordinances. We have a couple of ordinances in this packet here that are for special events and food trucks. We have gotten a couple of requests for special events, and we thought the best way to do it was to have it through an ordinance, because we don't actually have one at the moment. A lot of towns have their special events and food truck stuff done through the Park and Rec Commission, just make it easy. So maybe that's something we think about. Anyway, if anybody wants to pick this up. Thoughts?
I'm happy to draw attention to a few things, just as a starting point, and then you all can discuss the details. But Tony found an example from the town of Madison that I think probably is a good equivalent to what we would imagine for here. The big difference is, you'll see I highlighted it every time it mentioned the town council. Obviously, there is not a town council in Deep River. So if, for example, it was to say that the kind of approving body is the selectman's office, a different kind of check and balance body would have to replace where it says right now the town council would see an appeal, for example. And then the other thing that I wanted to just draw attention to was that I also did include the only ordinance that we do currently have that pertains to events and festivities, but it's specific to the muster. So we could just look at what is there, and the current ordinance that has to do with vendors as it pertains probably both to events and to the next conversation about food trucks. So that's my little bit, and that's it for me.
General comment I have is to go from nothing to a 7-page, or, you lasted since what, 1635 with nothing, and now it's a 7, I don't think we'd want to go with. Brevity.
Well, so yeah, that's why. So that was the one for special events was the shortest one I could find for special events. So I figured we'd do the same thing we did last time. Like, let's take this out, let's take this out. And then the rules pertaining to mobile food service, that's actually only a 3-page. But we can probably take some of that out too, because they were pretty specific about not being near their school and a bunch of other things. So
So historically, I know when Kathy Jefferson was the zoning enforcement officer, the food trucks were only allowed on park property. So it did let Park and Rec have that control of, because we were trying at that time, planning, zoning, my understanding was they didn't want them to be able to park down, you know, on South Main, right on the road or something like that because of the local businesses kind of put up a fuss. But now food trucks have evolved into a different things, so Park and Rec did have like a food truck festival, but we had it in the parks.
Yeah.
So we've handled that over the years. Park and Rec would say, you can set up at Flatwood for the summer or something like that, or down Landing. We had Simon's food truck there for a while.
Yeah.
So just something to think about, that then it did keep it a little tighter because it was only allowed in the parks, and then Park and Rec would have to give that approval, as well as the selectmen at the time.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, even if, that's why I mentioned Park and Rec, because I don't think we'd want to do it. No sense in taking that away from them, but if we can expand it a little bit, I like, you know, the industrial parks, no reason they can't do it in there.
Yeah, someplace where there's a lot of parking and there's easy traffic in and out, that's not congesting downtown or competing too much with our businesses downtown. I
Right.
think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I was just making aware in case it looked like
Yeah.
we never allowed them in town or something like that. It was like
Yeah.
very specific, and we had many conversations with Kathy Jefferson only because she's like, you guys get to decide. It's the only place we allow them is on town property, park, or something, so.
Well, that would simplify things.
Well, it's unlikely, but I beg to differ. I would tend to think that,
Whatever.
um, it- since it is a use that is compatible with other uses that are popping up, especially a brewery. There's a lot of, during COVID in particular, there was a requirement that the breweries serve food, and the way to do that was with a food truck. I think that there's going to be opportunities for that. So to the limitation to parks and having the decision made by Park and Rec would be, I think, limiting. To me, it has to do with the appropriateness of that use adjacent to other uses. So I do see it as being a more of a zoning issue.
I think I know where you're going with this. I think it is a zoning issue. But my interpretation was that we let Park and Rec still be the fee taker. They would take the fees and do the applications. But you're thinking planning and zoning does all that?
Yeah, and I would say that it would end up being more administrative, not an action of the commission. Especially if you begin to identify areas where it would be appropriate. Now, how do we distinguish between a food truck and a food cart?
Right.
It's the same sort of thing. It's a mobile use, which is restaurant use.
Yeah.
And we have that. So if we were to say that the only place that it is allowed is in parks, then we wouldn't have a barbecue place down at the end of Main. We wouldn't have a hot dog stand.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have hot dogs on the green because that's not the park, that's
Right.
church owned. So I'm in favor of it, and I think that we should be permissive in our regulations. But I think if we begin to restrict it to the purview of Park and Rec, it eliminates the business potential.
Let me, from my understanding, are we regulating just town areas, or, so for instance, the factory down the road, the plastic factory? Private place, they can have a food truck and we wouldn't have any say in that, would we?
Of course, you would, it's running a business,
Okay,
it's running a business in an area that's zoned for particular uses. So
but realistically today, more than likely, they'd have a food truck for their employees, and it probably happens today, but we don't regulate it today. Is that what we're saying?
Well, it's not allowed today. And then, so Zoe would have to play catch up and send them a cease and correct.
Yeah.
But I agree, I agree with you, Alan. I think we should expand. That's my intention was to, for high
So
nine.
I would say we either permit it as an event, and it could be a continuing event. If somebody wants to get a year-round permit, or it could be a, you know, specific occasion, but, making it specific to, uh, town property or parks, excludes the opportunity for economic development.
So I just want to just get more, so a business like the factory today, if they had an employee picnic, they would have to ask for permission for that?
Supposed to.
No?
There's actually, I think there is a part in the original ordinance that says something about like a $15 fee or something like that. But it's not real clear, and that's kind of why we're looking at this.
So, I mean, where we're going is we're deciding to regulate this
Yeah.
and having a requirement to, or an obligation to enforce it. If somebody decides that they don't like it when you bring a food truck next to my property. So, you know, whenever you open, say, you know, how do we regulate this? You look at Pandora's box and say you have to regulate it, enforce it. So it's a date. It's small town, live and let live, not bother anybody. If it's something that's gonna be very obvious, yes, permission. And to me, it's, should have to stay that way. And that's why I get into it generally. If you want to give somebody permission to do it as an event, it could be a year-long event. It's, you know, it's a special.
Hey, Tony, it looks like you.
No.
Simple as.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, it is actually in here. It's, under the first section, they go, or excuse me, under the second section, hawkers and peddlers. Each hawker and peddler defined by the general statutes. We'll skip all that. There's a fee of $100 for each vehicle used in connection with the vending. And it limits it to like no more than 4 people and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't, so I guess I didn't understand that until I just read that.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused on that per event, because right now the booster clubs for the high schools, they
Yeah.
oftentimes have things for the kids. They'll have the pizza truck come or the ice cream truck come. Or, you know, if I was gonna have a party here at the lake for the swim team, like we do every year, we haven't had an ice cream truck, but somebody had asked about it. Well, would that mean that I would have to go get a permit and pay $100 to have the ice cream truck come for that event?
Is,
Seems like it would be overreach.
there's a nuance to it, and that is one is if it's for commercial use, in which case you're making revenue. If you're having that for an event, it's an event, and to me, that, you know what I mean? I'm looking at him like he's looking at it.
I know.
But,
We're getting there.
your life size. It's one of those things like, I don't want to regulate it.
Yeah, well, that's what
But at the same time, if something moves in that is disruptive to somebody else's use of their property. If you get a food truck that's adjacent to a residence, that resident should be able to say, like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
If it's a one-time thing, it's really not gonna cause an issue. So, once we get into over-regulating.
Yeah.
we-
That's what
I
I'm
do
afraid of.
think that kind of hits on the major thing is the difference between like, even if a company has a food truck pull into their parking lot for a day and bring pizza to their employees or whatever, versus like, that's like a very isolated incident versus I think the regulation role really is more important if say High Nine did decide like, hey, we want to have a food truck every Saturday, then that might be something that we would want to have like a permit for, where it's like, okay, where are you going to place this? Like, do your neighbors like have any complaints about you taking up maybe multiple parking spots to park the food truck a certain way? So I think it makes more sense in those instances where it would be a repeating occurrence, or say someone parks up and just plants a food truck for 3 months in one spot in wherever, whether it's in the industrial park or at the 12 Bridge Street parking lot or whatever it is. So I think that's where it would be more of I think a concern for the commission in terms of use, where it's repeated like a weekly thing, or if it's sitting in one spot for an extended period of time.
It seems to me that it's a commercial enterprise. If it's registered as a business, then it would be a regulated activity, and then it would be, not zone specific, but a special permit, for use, because again, it might be appropriate in a.
Yeah, but that language is
Not
problematic. 'cause,
specifically appropriate, like, or designated, like the Harbor District.
Right.
Or even in some situations, a residential district that has some non-conforming uses. It seems like it would be perfectly appropriate, so, to me, that'd be appropriate.
I mean, there would be a difference between hiring a pizza, like when we get the pizza truck for the booster teams, the booster clubs pay for that truck and then it's, whatever, a few dozen pizzas. It isn't on it isn't like a restaurant that the kids are going up and buying a slice. But then
Right.
with the ice cream trucks, that's exactly what it is. I just see it as being kind of problematic, even if you just say, well, for commercial, but anybody's got a truck, it's commercial,
Yeah, but then the difference is that it's not a commercial enterprise if you're doing a fundraiser.
Right.
It's a fundraiser, which is not a business.
Well, I
Oh,
struggle with-
who's having the event? You mean in the case of the event? Okay, all right. Thank you, Don.
Yeah,
Or if you're
But-
having a
but-
wedding
but I
or a
still-
party at a house that's not commercial, that's a private event. It should not be
I
regulated.
still
Right.
struggle with it. I'm using the big factory as an example. If that factory has an employee event and wants to have a pizza wagon.
Well, that's a private event, though. That's not a public event
right.
where the public's coming in as a.
Well, maybe that's,
There you
is that
go.
the distinction?
Private and public.
I think that's the distinction. Yeah, Lisa's right. That's the way to say it, public versus private.
Yeah, well, okay, all right, that's probably what separates these two things.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I like
we wanna-
that.
We want to be business friendly. We don't want to be running to say you need a permit for your
Right.
employees.
Yeah, for the one time you're doing something for your employees.
And-
You can't feed those guys.
Okay,
Yeah, so Park and Rec only did if they was on town property. It never did any private.
Yeah.
So, people would have like a food truck coming for their employees or an event or
Yeah.
something. It was just if you wanted to be on town property, because a couple times before Larimar Stables opened, there was a truck that wanted to pull into that, like
Yep.
across from Flatwood. And it was like, nope, you can't be on there, even though it was like state road and all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
that's why they made them kind of come through Park and Rec and move to Flatwood.
Right.
Because-
Hey, that's the type of thing that you would want to control, besides like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's operating business opportunities. It's-
I favor what you're saying. If it's town property, we should regulate it, but if it's a business, even like Adams. Adams had a hot dog thing and they were giving away hot dogs for 4th of July. Should we regulate that?
I'm kind of thinking, let's play devil's advocate here for a second. So everybody's favorite smoke shop, right? He opens up the hot dog stand. Right there on the sidewalk, and we're saying we can't regulate it. Meanwhile, there's a hot dog.
But
place
that's
next door.
public, that's public sidewalk.
I'm saying he right off the sidewalk on his own property. There's a little grass strip there.
But so wouldn't Adams having a food truck be a public thing? It'd
Yeah.
be serving the public, and with the public, you have to be careful and you have to regulate, and you've got the health and you've got the this and the that.
Yeah.
When it's a private event.
Mhm.
And you're inviting the people that are coming to it, all right, such as a fundraiser, that's more what I would say, a private event, a fundraiser. Or you have a big company that's having a picnic for their employees, they are taking the responsibility of it for their employees. It's not the public walking in. So you as Joe Public walk into something like Adams, you want to know that it's safe, it's been inspected, it's been permitted, it's, you know what I mean?
Well,
So-
that's a good point because that would mean that it would have to be, and it is already, if it's a registered food truck, it's under the auspice of the health department. I believe that's where they get their licenses from CROD. But we probably should say that it has to be a registered food truck or food cart. Like, so somebody, that's a bit different than a lemonade stand, I guess. But if somebody
Yes,
who
'cause it's
does
gotta
set
be
that up,
inspected by the health department.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to
Event
check the public.
Agritourism,
Just left, 'cause-
and they have a food truck on a regular basis. Is that a business? Is that a different kind of business, or is that a?
And they're serving the public.
They're serving the public, so it would have to be inspected by a,
Yeah.
because you as the public are going there.
Yeah, I think, and I think,
Traditionally, small restaurants didn't like food trucks because they were in competition.
Mhm.
And they could just pull in anywhere and they didn't have to pay taxes, etc. So now we don't seem to care as much about that.
I think
And if it was a restaurant, I mean, you could have as many restaurants as the buildings allow.
right,
I'm, you know,
Well,
so,
if we had a taco truck pull up here, I'd say that that's a conflict of interest with the businesses that are established
Yeah.
on the region. So you'd say that's a commercial enterprise. It impedes, it's not compatible with the established uses on the street. It should be regulated as a use in that way. So if it's a party, fine. If Adams did it, I'd say, well, they're licensed to serve hot food there and it's a temporary extension for an event. But, we may not solve it all today, but to me, that's the distinction. We don't want to overregulate it, but.
I think you just nailed it though, because so like, let's take Da Vinci's across the street. During the muster, they move all their stuff out front and serve it there. So they actually have a food license. They just moved it outside. Same thing with Adams. So I think we're all right on that end of it.
Yeah.
Right. So we got some homework for this one, and then, so the
But
same
I,
thing.
I think we need to state that though, Tony, that if
What's that?
somebody were to set up a food cart or whatever, that it needs to be under the auspice of,
Standalone commercial enterprise.
And then,
It's an extension of an already approved use.
If you're a restaurant inside and on this day or a couple days, you extend your restaurant outside.
Even a season, it's like, seasonal use, it's beneficial for the town, it's a permitted use, it's on your property. It is a temporary facility.
do we require a separate permit if somebody wants to do outside seating on the walk? Like in front of Red House, they have their outside tables.
don't you have your regs in front of you?
Actually, I'm jumping between screens. That's what I'm trying.
That was
I thought if somebody with a greater knowledge knows, is that something that we,
But it was never adopted as a standing regulation.
okay.
Yeah, well, I agree with him, but I can't remember if we have anything in there or not. Because, I mean, off the top of my head, the Red House does have outside seating during the summer, but whether that's on their property or not is beyond me.
And we'd probably all agree it's a good thing that they do.
Yeah, I'm again, no issue there.
And that would
Colleague
make you
Joe's
kind of
also
think
makes
about
outside
the
parking.
Sanford and Sons place or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, that's always the issue.
Because I looked at our sidewalk ordinance and it's really an interesting ordinance.
Yep.
It doesn't say really where it says, can you really? Without clearing snow.
Speaking of clearing snow, I figured out, remember we were talking about, I think you brought this up. We were talking about people who plow across the street. The reason that they said no to that is if there's a sidewalk across the street, you can't plow from your driveway onto the sidewalk.
But we were
That's
trying
what
to
they're saying.
establish that you're not gonna leave snow on the sidewalk. You're just gonna simply be pushing it.
I know.
Yeah.
I think I reread that and I was like,
Makes
that's,
sense. Don't put it on another sidewalk.
oh. Come on now.
No on the side.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think common sense, yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about places where there's sidewalks. I was thinking more of where there's a field or
Yeah.
an empty spot or whatever.
I was like, why, how did that make that in there? But I reread it a million times to figure it out.
It's snow equity is what that is. Snow equity. Spread it around.
So with all this talk about all this, I had, sent to Tony and Tony had Zoe put out this little chart here that's like a use chart. And the section 14 vendors, this comes from Clinton. This covers all types of vendors. So it covers the food truck, and it covers seasonal outdoor use, and it covers all that stuff. So if we really get into this, it just might be easier if we condense everything into one set of regs. That's one
Yeah.
set that's 5 pages long instead of trying to catch up
Mhm.
at a later time when something else pops up.
So
Let's
farm
address it
stands,
now.
that
Let's
stuff.
do it, get it.
And then,
So we put it up there for you.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, that, well, it's
There it
just
is.
cut and paste, but this is what Clinton does. So they come in for an administrative permit. Very few have to go through the commission. Um, it's a zoning permit, but they're not allowed in residential neighborhoods, period, in residential zones. Mixed use zones, but not a residential zone. You don't want them on River Road, parked on the side of the road, and
No, but I want them up in Winthrop. I want farm stands up there.
Yeah, they have,
that's different though, but farm stands go under farming.
well, they actually have, so the upper part of this does allow
Okay?
transient and events in
Yeah.
residential
It's,
zones
well,
and seasonal outdoor use.
stationary is the food trucks, I think. They're not allowed in the residential. I'm just talking food trucks, not farm stands and stuff.
What do those different zones mean for people like me that don't know? What's an RED and an R60 and an R?
Those are all residential and that has to do with the density of.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm just trying to think this through
So,
out loud. This is the
Business
event.
zones, except for the village zone, they have to go through a site plan for stationary. But everything else is zoning permit.
Yeah.
It's very simple, like, it's,
Yep, yep.
So whoever takes the money, it's simple.
Stationary makes sense. That's an in situ structure. Right?
Right, let's, like,
If you have like a walk-in refrigerator.
Yep.
Or a kitchen.
gonna say Deep River Deep River Farms, when they had the, little thing on the road.
Well, like for the muster, we get all the vendors, and all the people selling the.
Yeah.
Tchotchkes during the muster. And Tina in my office handles all those.
Yeah, and that's just an event, so yes, everybody come, have your booths and stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, it's something to think about, to just go over all type, like this just covers all types of different vendors you might think about, and you just condense it into one set, right, so that we're not coming back in 6 months because we've got a new type of vendor that wants to come along.
So that would you do a tiered permit with that? If it's one set of regs, but then we still make people, like for parties or something, they still have to get a permit, but because that's a
No.
fundraiser
No,
thing,
not a
whatever, there's
private-
not a fee,
Not a
not
private
for private
party.
at all, not for,
No, no.
okay, okay.
And this is just an example and a suggestion. I wouldn't have 7 pages of regs, I would cut that back, but
No,
it's a place
I
to
like this
start.
example that Zoe has up because I'm
Yes.
a sucker for, it's a really quick flashboard. It's very simple.
Alright. Alright, so we got some work to do. I think we've got for food trucks and that kind of stuff. The only thing that we're not really covering is special events and like a music venue and that kind of stuff, and there has been quite a few requests for that kind of stuff. So I did type something up. Again, it's not perfect because it still has town council and all that stuff in there. So what are your guys' thoughts on special events?
You mean like beer trucks?
Yeah. Well, how about let's just go with music venue, outdoor music venue. Because that's kind of gonna be a tough one. Or a festival.
Think a
Let's-
one, basically, we have somebody who came in asking what the process would be to host a music festival, basically have like an outdoor stage and then a weekend, like a 2-day event. And we don't have anything for those like singular events besides the muster. And events under agritourism.
It's a 2-day event, they ask permission. 1-day event, they ask for forgiveness.
Well, I feel like they want to do this quite a bit.
Well, I think
mean,
they
I'm fine
would
with that.
prefer to have it be, probably a yearly thing or whatever it is, or, but I think it's worth having a process in place or at least a discussion so that the next time somebody wants to do some kind of event, that's not the muster, there's a kind of
Yeah.
I also think there's gonna, if once we have one at one of these venues, other venue's gonna want one too.
Gonna get more.
Right, so
Yes.
Right.
we'll pick on High Nine. If High Nine did one, even they're not the ones who asked, but if they did that, somebody's gonna see it and say, hey, wait a minute, that's a great idea. They did a lot of business. We want to do one over at the Rusty Rail.
Right.
And I mean, you just have to, I feel like that's gonna snowball.
To me, that's an event permit because it has to do with putting the other, looking at it as a special condition, the volume of people, what's being served, the duration, and that can have an impact on other properties. So that's something that should be reviewed as an event.
From a safety, yeah.
Yep, and, with input from a butters or neighborhood, et cetera.
The resident trooper, the police department, make sure.
And this special events code that you put together, I liked everything in it. I mean, I didn't have objection. I mean, the only thing that I was concerned with was Article 4, Section 4-2. Hours of operation, where it said that amplified sound would not begin before 9 AM nor extend beyond 10 PM. The first selectman may approve adjustments to the hours of operation and hours of amplified sound based on individual circumstances. I think that if we did something like this, I think that the 10 PM cutoff would not be able to be adjusted, because I think that the townspeople ought to be able to count on the fact that the sound is gonna go off at 10. And that if nothing is gonna be, well, yeah, sure, we'll extend it to 12 or whatever. I just think that
Well, the muster is allowed to at 12 o'clock if it's cut off.
that's fine, but if we're gonna start a new whole set of,
But just so you know, you already have an exception then, because that's been historical with the
and that's,
muster. They have to,
I think the 10 o'clock is good because we'll get the people from the landing who go, well, we got court, blah, 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 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So,
To me, it's one of those kind of special permit things.
yes.
Because if you had, if because they want to do a New Year's celebration.
Yeah.
It's tough to end that at 10.
I agree.
You
So,
might also have people who, if they're in an industrial zone or something, might be like, we're not abutting any residents,
Hmm.
who's gonna hear us.
Our industrial zones are very close to residents, and if it's increases volume of traffic and noise and everything else, then it's a very legitimate concern.
yeah, 1 or 2 events a year is not a huge deal. Well, if we're going to start getting a lot of them, then people are going to possibly have a lot of nights disturbed by a lot of noise.
right, so I take it we're backtracking. We're gonna leave the first selectman may approve adjustments for the muster for something I don't even know where else.
right, 10 o'clock. Case by
Well, the
case,
muster
that's-
already has its own ordinance, so this would be,
It does, and I wouldn't
This-
change
this
that.
wouldn't
It
have to
has
worry about the
traffic,
muster.
That's historical,
Okay.
but I'm talking moving forward.
Yeah.
Anybody that comes in under the new regs would have to make sure that their events end at 10 o'clock for amplified sound, that's all. It would be up to them
Yep.
to make sure that that's how it worked.
Yeah, because if you're a Christmas caroler, like for the holidays, it's not amplified, that's just people singing. So, okay, I'll go with that. All right.
Well, what if
every
we just
special
added-
event would have to be approved.
Yeah, after individual circumstances, what if we just put by special permit? Or you don't like that?
Well, this is an ordinance, so it wouldn't be through us.
It wouldn't be through us.
So-
Oh, right.
What about the Swede Club?
I always forget which one's which. The one here or the one
that
down?
backs up to the tracks.
Okay.
They've already gotten variance to allow them to have outdoor events.
And then what is their cutoff for amplified sound? Is there anything special with them?
I believe it's 10 o'clock.
I can hear it all the time.
I know.
So I'm just
Okay.
saying that if they had an event every Friday and Saturday night, when do I get a quiet Friday or Saturday night? You would be.
I'm not worried about you.
Now I know why you're.
I'm just-
That's
it's-
rough.
Some
Yeah.
people don't
Yeah.
want to have to hear
Yeah.
that repeatedly. Once or
Yeah.
twice or 3 times a year is different than having your
Yeah.
whole life changed.
At least I'm compensated the bottom of the can deposits.
So I'm a little confused. So we're talking about an ordinance, but then we were also talking about if it's a special event, they need to get a permit. Which are we talking here?
So yeah, and so
Yeah.
if any event that they want, like, so we'll keep picking on I-9. I-9 has inside stuff. They want to go, all right, we're gonna have an outside event. They have to go to the first selectman, pay the fee, fill out the app.
It's a permit by the town. not-
All right, so it's still gonna be reviewed. Okay,
Right.
I got it. All right, I read that, yeah.
And then if they, if they say, well, we're not sure about the parking, they can have us look at it or whatever.
And the fire chief will do the review for safety.
And we have to start.
Do it.
And then we see how it goes, and then we can always come back and we can always amend and,
Right, this part's not working.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Steph, sorry.
It's no fun, I agree with you.
Can we put a limit on how many permits they can pull? You know, you don't want your neighbor pulling 12 permits in the summer every weekend, but say 3 spaced out.
Do we have a limit?
So I forget, we have an event expert here. Stanley knows a
I
little bit
know.
about this. Yeah.
Well, in there, I think it said if there's an event already in that area,
Yeah.
then they could deny it because there's already one going on. There at the same time. That's in there.
I thought there wasn't.
I thought there was too. I thought there was a limit.
Yeah, I thought so.
What happens when you don't write this yourself and just steal it? Don't see one? I will reread it, but I think you're right.
I tried to skim through, but I do agree that I think, there is a line between, if somebody's doing something every weekend, it would become similar to you just needing a special permit through zoning because it's clearly part of their regular use versus you're doing something
Right.
all year as your regular use, but you're doing one bigger event once or twice a year, it's not, it's just a different type of thing.
Okay. All right, if you guys are good with this, we'll go back to and tweak these a little bit and
Just, I'd say skinny it down, but we got to it.
yeah. Okay. All right, you guys will see these again. Old business, we've got nothing. Report to the EO. Anything exciting?
I do have one thing that I wanted to bring up. So I had somebody come in and ask me if they could put 2 apartment units on their second floor of their already mixed use building. And what I would like to, so I'll just show you the property in question so you can see. Okay, so this is 190 Main Street. This main floor here on the ground floor is the current gym, which is remaining unchanged. And as you may or may not know, this front area on the second floor is already an apartment. And so he came to me asking if he could put 2 apartments here, so one on this half and one on this half. And currently, that is not permitted in our zoning. Our mixed use buildings limit to a maximum of 2 residential units. And so I just wanted to raise it as a question to the commission. We did have, sorry, one second. Sorry. Some noisiness coming from the kitchen. So basically what I wanted to raise was we have a limit to mixed use buildings right now for only having 2 residential units maximum, which I think, he could turn this into one big apartment, but I don't find it completely unreasonable of an ask to have 2. And so I guess I wanted to just open it up for discussion, kind of let you know, and I also let him know that I would bring it up with the commission just so that I could report back to him on what his options were, and if it's just a no, that's totally fine. But the other piece of this is that we did have in here combined use, which was listed as in these areas, sorry for the scrolling, hopefully no one's getting dizzy. Just trying to get to the use tables, and we have to actually, so we removed the combined use definition because it was identical to mixed use. Which then didn't make any sense to have two things with two different names with the same definitions. However, we need to revise the regulations further because there's combined use still appears in a few places, including, sorry. Did I go too far? Sorry, let me do a search. Okay, village mixed use. So in the village mixed use zone, which I believe is the zone for this property.
Always bottom of these.
Oh, it's village commercial. Okay, so well, in either of these zones, so it's the same table at least. Right now, we still have combined use listed on the zoning tables as being allowed via special exception. And then we have mixed use buildings as being allowed via site plan. But essentially before they were the same exact definition. So it was just a repeat of the same thing, but you could apply for it and call it mixed use and it's a site plan, or you apply for it and call it combined use and it's a special exception. So that's something we would have to correct anyway, of either choosing to amend the regulations and removing combined use altogether, or potentially redefining combined use to allow for maybe more proposed apartments than just that limit of 2 that's in the mixed use definition. And if we still wanted to have more oversight, you could keep it then as a special exception. So I just wanted to raise those two things because they are related. And we should decide what to do with this. If it's just voting to amend the regulations and removing where it says mention of combined use because we removed the definition, but it still appears in a few places. Or kind of redefining combined use so that it actually is different from mixed use. And I thought that the inquiry that came in from this person was a good example of where it could serve a purpose. But anyway, that's my little ZEO dilemma of the month.
Can you go back to the definition for mixed use?
Sorry, now that you scrolled all the way up here.
It's okay.
Because there's a couple things in there that I think are strange. So if you read through that, it says, basically you can only have 2 units. And mixed use means that the bottom is commercial and the upstairs is residential or something along those lines. But I think let's just take the town hall, for example. If there was multiple businesses down here, you're telling me you can only have 1 apartment upstairs, even though you have all that floor area? It doesn't make sense. So I think if you limited it to, if it's, can have whatever the hell you want in the upstairs, as long as it's in the upstairs and the bottom remains commercial.
Yeah, if it meets health
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and they have parking, and get rid of that minimum 500 square feet.
You're actually not allowed to have that anymore.
Yeah,
The state,
get that out of there,
the state did away with,
minimum.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm back here. What's the downside of being able to have
More housing?
Yeah.
What's the problem with more housing? I agree. Especially if you're not taking away from commercial.
But let me ask, would this check the box for affordable housing if you put more up there?
Yeah, right. Family,
But if
it's
you
deed
keep
restricted or
restricted.
HFA, financing.
So it could be, yes.
Any objections
But
from
in a
anyone?
mixed use area, I think you need more.
I mean, let's look at, across the street where the
Well,
breakfast place is.
Yeah.
They already have 3 apartments above that. Or we'll take, Smith and Wesson, right? If they keep the downstairs commercial, I mean, it's just an exaggeration.
Yeah.
The upstairs can be,
Yeah, technically, yeah.
yeah.
I think that would be great.
And it does resolve a problem because you want smaller apartments that.
Right.
Do you agree?
I was thinking,
Thank you.
you're thinking, you haven't come up with something yet.
He likes to play the other side.
Yeah, no, that's good. Cause,
What, could we require that if they had more than two, like if they had 3 apartments, that the third would have to be, affordable? Could we do that kind of requirement?
No. But, to me, it's an issue of it's compliant with building code. It's a legal rental unit. And there's a market for it. It's,
No, it's definitely a good thing. A lot of the younger couples that live in Deep River live in these upstairs apartments because they can't afford, we lack the units for, starter house, if you will, or whatever we're deciding to call it. So having more of these is definitely a good thing.
What about no more than 2 bedrooms? Could we take that out too?
Yeah, I would too.
Because again, if it's,
I think the
if you have a big commercial property, you wanna do a big luxury apartment above.
Yeah.
Put in 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms.
yeah.
I think the big thing is the ground floor, the very first part is the ground floor, it has to contain a commercial use. That way you're keeping your commercial space on Main Street or wherever. You got something?
So how did things go, appeals last night with Bob?
You got it. They had some issues. There was a missing tape recorder, but, we got through it.
There's residential on the first floor.
It is from, right, but they had to repeal our regulation to do it.
Yeah, and it was a variance for a very unique parcel that,
Yeah.
getting back to Daniel's question on affordable housing. Is there any motivation for that person who's putting these apartments in to go affordable? What would motive, I mean, we'll never check the box if there's nothing to motivate people to do it.
The town has to take the initiative to create some incentive.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
tax abatement or, something along those lines in order to meet our requirement, our obligation. Because if somebody's foregoing potential income to stipulate it's affordable, there should be some, to me, there should be some benefit, but, I think if we were to create a regulation that stipulated that if you want 2 apartments and one has to be affordable, I think that's an overstep.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
I was gonna.
Well, an incentive housing program is something that we're supposed to be working on and we're supposed to be showing progress on. So that,
We'll get to that. I got something.
yeah, I think that there is a place that could fit with this, but I don't know if we have anything existing today to that level to incentivize.
no, but I think changing the regulations and the zoning where it makes sense and then simultaneously working on incentives, then those will work together to produce the outcomes that we would want to see with that, so.
A lot of towns actually have affordable housing, opportunity regulations, like, so I'm trying to think of Madison off the top of my head. They have an affordable housing zone that you can do as an overlay. And so a lot of times, if you're gonna do a subdivision, if you do affordable housing, they'll allow you some leeway, so you don't have to come in with an 830G, but you're proving that you're gonna deed restrict some of your housing. So that we're not, it doesn't look like you're forcing the town to say, hey, look, this is what we're gonna do, and you don't get any say. We have a regulation that says, if you do some of these things, we'll give you a few more units. So maybe something to think about. It's not, has nothing to do with this, but I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Well, I think it should tie into this. That's why I initially asked, because that goes in the same way as it's, we're talking about incentives for ADUs and this would be a little bit different, but it's a housing unit and it definitely could qualify, in that starter home. It'll meet the AMI. That's the thing. If it's an upstairs apartment, unless it is a big luxury, odds are that it'll meet the AMI that we need for it to be affordable. So
So I guess by taking out the restriction of 2, we could create opportunity in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna have this as a regulation at the next meeting, if you guys are all right with that.
yes,
So would you like me to prepare a text amendment for public hearing and for the next meeting?
One second, I want you to say something.
So is this change to our regulations in alignment with our existing POCD and our pending POCD?
I'll have to make that decision on planning zoning, which
Because I think we need to make sure that, this is just because we've made so many changes to our regulations because somebody has an opportunity and asks us for clarification, so we change our regulations for an individual. And
So
it
I
just
would
needs-
say this one definitely does align with at least the POCD that
Yeah.
we are closing out on.
So you know what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
asking to make sure that this is in alignment with a directive that we've identified and is not a.
Yeah, diversifying the housing stock is definitely in alignment with the POCD.
Take a Clinton for a second, because I actually like the way you guys started to do that. So when they make decisions now, they make sure that they mention whether or not it coincides with the current plan of conservation development. So good on you guys. So maybe that's something we have to.
We have to
consider
give a
doing.
justification. There's, because otherwise it can be contested.
So just to throw something out, the Lace Factory had apartments upstairs, didn't it?
Mhm.
So in that case, I think they only had
Two.
Yeah. So this regulation would allow them to put more up there, I guess, if we take it away. I don't know, I guess that's a good thing.
If mixed use buildings are allowed in that zone, we'd have to look at that zone. So it's again, something else we should look at.
That's a medium density residential.
Got it, yeah. All right, so all right,
Yeah, we'd have to look, where do the mixed use?
doesn't apply, it doesn't apply there.
Right, but where does mixed use apply? So we'll have to look at that too at the next meeting. So yeah, so if you would, it sounds like we're on board to take a look at this.
Okay, so I will remove from this definition the maximum number of residential units, the 500 square foot, and the maximum bedroom numbers.
Mhm.
And are there any other adjustments?
Well, all right, so the 50% of gross square footage, so that would make sense that the upstairs is gonna be more than 50% square footage of the downstairs. The downstairs is all commercial. But in the instance of, so say there's a space where there's the shops up front, but the back is storage. It's not in that, I mean, I guess it's still commercial, but yeah, I think I just answered my own question. I don't know, I was just, I had to play that out. I just want to make sure that all available space that could be used should
Yeah.
be used for apartments.
Yeah, well, I mean, it also
Like a
it
three-floor
might simplify
stair.
it to just do ground floor versus second floor.
Yes, please make it simple for Daniel, please.
You know, whenever we get these percentages of square footage, it's always a little like,
Yeah,
I was gonna add, so there's probably something we want to add, that if it requires an exterior change, which I see something about that, the screen's on angle, but if it requires an exterior change and it's in one of the districts, like one of the village districts, that it has to go to design advisory. So we should, I was gonna say, but there's so many regulations that people miss that, so if you repeat yourself, or you're really killing yourself. I'm thinking, you're specifically to look at this one thing.
Yeah. If you listen to every place except for one,
That's
then,
okay,
then it's, it's a negative by omission.
okay.
So I think we should simplify that, and say if it's in a village district, it's reviewed and it,
Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then my
Are we
other,
saying we're getting rid of the 50%?
I think I would.
We should.
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure that, okay.
okay.
and then, yeah, so the final question is then can part of the proposed amendment or a second just text amendment be removing anywhere where the combined use building still occurs in the use tables?
I think so, because if we remove the definition, so I think the intent was to remove it and it just didn't happen.
Yes, clean it up.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will.
Okay. All right. On to POCD.
So
So I have two remaining sections that I will be sending out to you all tomorrow. Carol, I sent you a little, like 2 sentences about the next public presentation, which is going to be on March 5th, during the usual POCD meeting time. and I'm gonna send out a press release tomorrow to a few of my local connections. So I don't know if it's quite as exciting the second time around, but I'll still do it for them. And yeah, so I've gotten feedback from some of you, and right now I'm not incorporating feedback because I want to finish up these last little pieces and get them out to you. But as soon as those are out, I will begin incorporating feedback. So if you haven't gotten me feedback yet on any of the sections, send them my way. And I will be outlining as well tomorrow a draft presentation. And I'm open to ideas, and maybe we can talk about a little bit right now, of how to present this next kind of iteration, since last time we just talked about those broader goals for each section, but this time we want to have the more detailed draft available for viewing. And so with that, how do we want to approach the presentation this time? Do we want it to be just a little bit more Q&A and less of like here's what a POCD is, here's each section again? So I'm open to your thoughts, and I also am meeting with John tomorrow to also strategize, because he's done more of these presentations than I have for here's this big document we wrote. Let's talk about it. So
For your press release, before I forget, could you, in it, because you mentioned that there are paper copies available at the town hall, because that was the biggest pushback we got at the first meeting, was no one had a paper copy and they weren't going to print out 800 pages and on and on. So I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a big part of that. And let's
Yeah.
make the copies this time.
yeah. Okay.
That's my input for that for right now.
One thing I'd recommend for the next presentation to the public is that we have a large physical map available, so that in the course of discussing the POCD, that we have the ability to identify areas affected that will be impacted or that are being considered or whatever. At the same time, it's a good cue for the public to say, what about over here? What, and they'll ask questions that we may not have thought to ask. It gives people an opportunity and a venue to, comment on the POCD about things that we may not have considered, so.
I like that idea. I love a map. I am a GIS person, so love a map. What do you think about doing one printed out where people could do the old sticky note ideas near things? And
I mean, huge advocate, I'm a huge advocate of that, and because it allows people to have a voice and a visualization. It's very-
great. Okay, I will make note of that. And my follow-up question, I'm glad we're talking about this today, so I have next week to get it all printed out, is do you think it should be the zoning map or aerial view, or two maps?
I was just gonna say two maps, but I wanted to let you finish talking. For two reasons. One, there were people who are gonna identify one way or the other. And two, there was a lot of people here last time, so I think two maps spreads people out if they want to get to it and make notes.
Okay,
I would almost say four, because then you have one that's area. Each people, like there's an aerial and a zoning one here, and an aerial and zoning one over here. And so people can spread out to get to them. But I mean,
awesome.
it's not my paper, so I can say that.
Okay, I mean, that sounds really fun to me. It sounds better than me going through a whole PowerPoint again. So I think how I'm gonna do this next round of the presentation is we'll make it a little more interactive. We'll have some paper copies of our monster document and the maps, and I will instead draft some kind of guiding questions as the presentation to have up. And have them relate to each section of our focus areas. And I'll share that out to the committee for feedback.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. If not, on to attorney. Okay, so I got nothing. Anybody else? Nancy, anything? No, perfect. That was always good when you have nothing from the attorney. I'm the
Mhm.
chairman. Two things I wanted to bring up. One is I got an email, as did Alan from the Danellos. They mentioned the noise ordinance, so whether or not you guys want to take that up, please rack your brain about that.
For the develops.
They own the Old River Wind Inn. So, their concern is that there's garbage trucks at 5 o'clock in the morning picking up the garbage, and so they came in, I'm just relaying information, so just think about it, if you want to come up with a noise ordinance, we can work on that too, since we are doing ordinances at the moment. And the second thing was at the joint land use meeting in December, January, can't remember now, they all blend together. We discussed some possible locations for affordable housing, and Daniel's working on affordable housing grant money. So anyway, we kind of pigeon-toed the piece of property that is owned by the Historical Society, but is behind Ebbets Field, because they own a really weird piece. So I did reach out to Jerry, who's is it the chairman of? Okay, so I reached out to him to mention it, and he said we would be open to that if we could do some kind of land swap. So there's some background in going on where they may be interested in doing some land swapping with the town. So the town can then gain that piece and maybe do affordable housing there. And then he would have to, or the town would have to talk with our housing authority, because apparently they have some grant money to do something like this. So there's some stuff going on that there may be a way to do affordable housing, but nothing's come full circle yet. So anyway.
Tony, you sent out the
Yes.
email to get, Jerry, I saw that. Did he respond to you? He didn't respond to me. That's why I'm asking.
He did, yes, he did. So they would like to talk about it some more, so they're open to it.
Oh, that's awesome. I thought
Yeah.
they left it saying, good.
No,
Yay.
he just hit reply, not reply all. Sorry. So yes, they're open to that. They think that's a great idea because it's kind of hidden and it's also next to other apartments. So
That's awesome. And the Housing Authority is very excited about that as well. If they're, yay, that's really awesome, Tony.
yeah, so
Good.
again, it's gotta come through planning and zoning, and then everybody in the selectmen will have to agree to it, the Board of Finance and the Historical Society. So it's a big, huge project, but there's just little pieces happening at the moment.
The boards were not very happy with,
Trying to sell it.
right,
We're not gonna sell it.
uh,
We're gonna trade it and they're gonna get more property. So their attorney thinks that's a good idea.
Oh, the Historical Society,
Yeah,
because I talked to
Yeah, this could be
Jerry.
a win-win-win for everybody, for the Historical Society, for the town. It's really, I'm very excited about the potential with this.
Jerry doesn't know the history.
Well, they had to check the deed. They weren't sure, because I said, well, they're looking for an influx of cash.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe the town buys it, you get the influx of cash, we sell it to like a developer or somebody to put up affordable housing units or something, like a win-win, you know?
I understand the logic of it, but in terms of the will, in the
Exactly.
past, that was not allowed.
right.
Right, so that's the reason you couldn't sell it. But the nice thing about this is Devon's Field used to be part of that property. Historically,
No,
Southworth owned the whole area.
Dr. Devitt.
that was
Yeah.
Job Southworth.
Yeah.
Ezra was Job's son, but it was not part of the same property. There were two separate
Okay,
properties.
sorry. Okay. Anyway,
I'm researching.
Maybe the town gets the,
right, and this is the point, it may not happen.
Owns that property in back of that other house on the
Yeah.
end of Southworth,
Yeah.
where the bold, like leaf dump was.
Yeah,
And they own all that, and that was what I said to Jerry, you could put a couple houses back there, or at least one like multifamily, like little or something, duplex, you know, I mean, we could get some units in, but.
Yeah, there's,
I mean, they need an influx, obviously, there is a need there, but this could be done as a joint project with, I mean, we need to investigate it for sure. We need to see if they're open to it, but I don't think that by any means the land has to be reverted to the town and the town has, in order for the project to happen. I mean, it could remain partly with the Historical Society and then they would be able to generate income.
It's been sitting there all the
Right.
time.
there's a few
Put your shoes on.
routes.
And the big thing is so everybody knows, is that there's been money for a while, according to our housing authority, is if we can identify a piece of land,
Right.
some things can move pretty quickly. It's just, we haven't been able to utilize those resources, and some of those resources have gone away because we simply haven't, we don't, well, you all know, we don't have a lot of space to do this stuff, so.
Right. That's the point of this is this could just die on the vine too. There may, because, the Attorney General in Connecticut got involved last time. But we have a different Attorney General this time, and he may be open to a land swap versus land sale. So again, just a lot of talk at the moment, but.
Especially if you're talking affordable housing, the mood
Yeah.
has changed significantly.
Right, so there's hopefully some options there. We'll see what happens. That's it for me. Budget. Those are coming up. We've got our budget all online, so I think we're good there. Housing Committee, Daniel, take it away.
So the last housing committee meeting, they, talked about what we did last year, what we want to do next year, but the big thing is they gave me some homework to do, and I just shared the spreadsheet with you, Tony, and with Zoe,
Mhm.
so you can reference it. And Zoe, I will be giving you feedback because there's 50 items on this spreadsheet. And essentially what it is, it's things like that you recognize is there's administrative actions, like establish a housing committee. Are we doing it or not doing it? What's our progress, right? And, and there's like 20 things of that, but then regulatory adjustments, which is the big thing we have all been working on here, is, inclusionary zoning implementation, where we at with that, incentive housing program, the revised ADU regs. So I have like 50 points on here that what I need to do is, because kind of time got ahead of me, but I need to go through and look at our housing plan that Zoe shared with me and make sure that everything that's on this little list I have is on there for the POCD. I believe it is, but I need to kind of do a match. And some of the stuff we've already, we're already ahead of the game. I like this. I'm glad we aren't behind on everything on this list, but it's like 50 different items. Carol, I believe you were sent a copy too. I don't know if you had a chance to look over it, right? But that's it. So I'm going to be taking care of that worksheet and might be reaching out to you, Zoe, if I have questions. Like I said, I kind of got ahead. Time got away from me, and I think I need to have this done by Tuesday. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
That's
so
okay.
there's that.
I am in, focus crunch mode for.
No, that's
make
good.
sure. So no, it's good. It's good. And my colleague is reviewing the numbers in the housing section that I sent out to make sure they're all the most up to date, since the original draft was from like 2 years ago now. She's doing that anyway, and with the draft that we put out, we'll be sure to note that it is still a working draft. So we still.
Yeah, and that's when you asked, you said you hadn't received that. That's why you hadn't gotten feedback, any new feedback from me, I should say. You've had feedback in the past, obviously, because I need to go through and make sure that everything. I believe it's all on there, but we might just need to add a line item or two. That these are things that we're looking at or working on.
Yeah, no, if
some of
something
some of these we
isn't
may
stated
not want to go with,
explicitly,
right?
whatever it is, yeah.
And apart from that, there's more talk about the fair house, your fair share. Nothing really new to report on that. That's kind of a nutshell. Nothing new really from the regional planning. We spent a couple hours looking at bicycle paths. That was a lot of bicycle paths, very expensive, millions of dollars of bicycle paths, but they don't affect our town, unfortunately.
Yep.
Or fortunately, depends how you look at it. That's all I have to report on that.
Ready? Payment of bills. Anything like that? Sorry, on to adjournment. Need a motion?
Just have a question.
Oh, yeah, fire.
Do you have anything, so we're planning a town meeting, because I have two things to go to the town meeting. Number one, in the administration ordinance, our procurement policy, and also to transfer some money. Do you guys have anything from an updated ordinance or anything that you want to put on that agenda?
I think we have 4 of them that we did. So we can get those 2. We're waiting on one because our attorney's reviewing it, because it's the one that establishes planning and zoning. So we wanted him to act, land use attorney to actually look at that. So I think that's the only one that's not ready, but I will send those tonight.
Okay, I mean, we can do a separate town meeting at some point just for planning, because I don't want to have anything get voted down if people don't have a chance to
Right.
review it. Because then they think you're pulling something over on them, I mean.
No, I understand.
With, the
Yeah.
total understanding of, that's how I would maybe be if I was the public, like,
Yeah.
what are they up to, so.
Right. Yeah, so
But if we can get the word out and then I can put the changes out, original and changes on the website or something, people can review it. But yeah, anything for the town meeting, let me know.
okay, I'll get those to you because we did vote on some of them. I'm just waiting on the last one, but we'll get you the other ones first.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, someone, anyone?
Hmm.
Thank you. Looking for a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. See you, on March 5th. Well, have a good
March
night.
5th. Thank you.